How well can you ever actually know a main character in a game?
Hello, Two Forks Tower.
How does our knowledge of a main character affect our enjoyment of a game? Can we ever know too much or too little?
Hello? Whoever this is?
It's Henry, right?
Yeah.
I'm Delilah.
Yeah, that's what the guy said on the phone.
So, what's wrong with you?
Excuse me?
On second thoughts, these are actually the wrong questions to start with. Let me try again. What's one of the more common tropes in video games? It's in regards to the main character. To do with their identity. You got it yet?
My God. Who the hell am I?
That's right, amnesia. It's not hard to see why this became so popular. Giving the main character amnesia puts them on the same footing as the player. Your discoveries become their discoveries. Even if the character remembers their past later on, or sets off on a journey to discover their true identity, it doesn't really matter. You're discovering these secrets right alongside them. Time hasn't been very kind to the amnesia trope though, so it's used a lot less often these days. Although certain facets of the trope still linger about the industry, such as the idea of the main character's past not being very important. It's almost necessary if you're playing a role. You may be playing a character with a history that they remember full well, but there's still a blank slate. In some games you even get to choose what their past is. There's a fine line that these games have to walk, between playing a role and experiencing a story. It's one of the major differences between games and other media like movies or TV. We're not just watching the action from the sidelines, trying to suss out the characters. We're assuming a role. While this could be true of even the most mindless of shooters, it's especially true in regards to role-playing or adventure games. Whatever your opinions of lackluster backstories or amnesia are, the simple fact is that they make walking this tightrope much, much easier. Although things have started to change. In the last few years, I've started to notice that more and more playable characters aren't blank slates, but rather fully fledged. It may well have happened earlier, leave examples in the comments, but for me, I started to see a change when Telltale games started to become more popular, specifically with the Walking Dead series. The very first episode begins with Lee Everett in the back of a police car, and this is the very first line of dialogue you hear.
Well, I reckon you didn't do it then.
This sets up one of the key questions throughout the entire season. What happened? Is Lee guilty? And what is he guilty of? This video isn't about saying that this approach is right or wrong. Games are all precious, delicate snowflakes and are free to be as different as they like. Although throwing up a mystery around Lee does prevent us from fully assuming his role, because now we're trying to figure him out. This isn't an issue for the most part. Choices and scenarios show up and you deal with them however you wish. The balance of role-playing and experiencing a story is maintained. Although this isn't so much the case when you're asked to make decisions about Lee's past, because now, instead of making the right choice for the sake of Lee or the group or whatever, the desire to experience the story takes over and you may find yourself making choices simply because you want answers. I know I did.
I got into a fight once.
And what happened?
And it ended really badly.
The game is deliberately written this way. Some characters may claim to know what happened, but nothing is ever really confirmed, which keeps Lee's past vague, resulting in a crushing crescendo found in the final episode, where he finally has the chance to bare his soul. Oh, spoilers by the way.
Have you ever hurt somebody you care about?
Yes, of course.
Who?
My wife.
How?
She traveled for work. I didn't like that. I wanted a family.
A reasonable thing to want.
So we fought, and it made my biggest fear come true. Got sick one day on my way to class. Canceled it and went home. Found her there with someone else. Killed him.
Just to be perfectly clear, I love this moment. But it's the ultimate example of role-playing and experiencing a story not working hand in hand. When I first played this, I wasn't considering this from Lee's perspective. I wasn't thinking that this was the perfect chance for Lee to atone for his sins and ask for forgiveness for his wrongdoings. I just wanted the question that has been hanging over the game from the very beginning to finally be answered. I wouldn't say that this ruined the moment for me in any way, shape or form, and I still love Lee as a character, but due to the way he was written, we were only ever able to really partially assume his role. After finishing with The Walking Dead, co-project leads Jake Rodkin and Sean Vanneman left Telltale Games to form Campo Santo and started work on the company's first game. In Firewatch, you play as Henry, who takes a job as, well, a firewatcher. Sean Vanneman, writer of the game, wanted to approach Henry differently to how he approached Lee.
I remember sitting in that old office in like November 2013 and being like, so much of The Walking Dead Season 1 was, did he do it, didn't he do it? The character on screen knows, I don't, let's experience the story. But we were making a game that was first person. So it's like, you are more, even more so him now. I remember thinking like, well, I did one game like that, like, not doing that again.
So how are they able to make the player fully assume Henry's role? Well, to begin with, instead of creating a mystery, the game essentially tells you everything right away, allowing us much more insight into Henry's life, while also allowing us to leave our own stamp on the story. We see how he met his wife, the key events that happened in their lives, including the tragedies. Also, and it may seem like a minor point and probably more of a budgetary thing, but it's also interesting how these events aren't portrayed through cutscenes but rather through this twine-like aesthetic, which makes the whole thing seem more like a collection of memories rather than a series of story beats. So by the time you've reached the fire tower, you feel like you've established at least something of an identity and aren't trying to figure Henry out. Hell, eagle-eyed players can even read his diary entries if they so desire. So when the conversations with Delilah, your boss, finally begin and she starts asking about his personal life, you're not thinking, oh, finally a chance to find out more about Henry's past. Instead, you're assuming his role and deciding how much of Henry's personal life you want to divulge. Do you trust Delilah? Do you even like her? How do you actually want to play this role? Are you going to do what you think Henry would do, or make your own decisions? Or a mix of the both?
I'm actually married.
But you're here.
Everything's fine, just, we're taking some time apart, getting some fresh air.
A little change.
Yeah,
Alright, well, we can just leave it at that.
thanks.
You're free to assume this role without fear of betraying anyone, including Henry. If you were to completely ignore Delilah for the entire game, you wouldn't be missing out on Henry's backstory because you already know it all. Firewatch is perhaps the best example of a game where the player assumes the role of a fully fleshed out character whose past is vital to their development, but doesn't allow that to get in the way of playing a role. Although, and admittedly this might just be a personal thing, it might not be perfect. There is a potential hang-up here, as information can be suggested, but without confirmation, it still feels like there's something to learn. Okay, here's an example. In the opening, there is something of a leap in logic. A tragic circumstance befalls Henry's family, then suddenly he takes a job as a firewatcher. Which from a writing perspective is great. Motivations can be implied instead of outrightly stated, and I was able to deduce enough about Henry for myself.
I don't want to, I guess I don't necessarily want to just have you guys spoil the game, but was the personal trouble that he ran into, is it that he loves to start fires?
He loves to not watch them, and this is an attempt to sort of cure himself of that.
Got it.
But when opportunities arose themselves, I still wanted to hear Henry explain it himself. In fact, upon picking up the radio for the very first time, this is the very first question Delilah asks.
So, what's wrong with you?
Excuse me?
People take this job to get away from something. So, what's wrong?
Which is a little on the nose, but also made me hope that he would answer. He's evasive, of course, but it did make me wonder if this sort of minimal exposition can go hand in hand with role-playing. A minor point, but one that I feel is still important. I suppose the point I'm driving to is that having playable characters with fully fleshed out and important backstories that impact the plot is still a relatively new thing in games like these, and as such it's something I think we're still in the process of figuring out. Maybe it's impossible to completely know a character and their motivations without just outright telling the player. Or maybe I'm making something out of nothing and this is just a personal hang-up. I made this point earlier, but it bears repeating. I'm not saying that one approach to character development is definitively better than the other, but in regards to maintaining the balance between role-playing and enjoying a story, Firewatch accomplishes a hell of a lot.